Hi everyone. After last lesson on a film company, in this episode we're going to be looking at and analysing a specific media product. This time we're going to take a look at the film Taken 3 from 2015, which is a 20th Century Fox film. First of all, the purpose of the film Taken 3 is to entertain the audience. It does this by being action-packed and including a lot of spectacle. The pace is also very fast, as the editing involves a lot of fast cuts and dramatic music. Taken 3 is a film produced for a mass audience, so it was released internationally. This means that 20th Century Fox can increase commercial gain, which means that they can make more profit due to the fact that the film is mainstream. This is typical of the company as it is a large conglomerate. The genre of Taken 3 is action-adventure. Since this is a mix of two genres, action and adventure, it is known as a subgenre. In 2001, Daniel Chandler said that genre means type or category, and Barry Keith Grant said in 1995 that all genres have subgenres. This can be seen with the film Taken 3, as it is primarily advertised as an action-packed film with lots of fights and chases. But the adventure aspect of it is the quest to prove who murdered Brian Mills's wife and clear Brian's name with the police. Taken 3 is a feature-length film, the running time being 1 hour and 50 minutes. The film's been distributed all around the world on many different platforms. It was in cinemas globally when it first came out, and is now available on DVD and Blu-ray, and download formats like iTunes and Google Play worldwide. It is available on the streaming service Netflix too. The large area in which the film was distributed reflects its targets of a mass mainstream audience, and also the company that made it, 20th Century Fox, as the film made a lot of money. Taken 3 has a modern aesthetic quality, meaning that it is set in the present day, in the 21st century. You can tell this from the film because the dress and language is modern, the setting, the USA, looks like it does at the moment, and the film has too high a definition to be from the past. Taken 3 also creates verisimilitude, which means that it appears real and presents real life. We know this because the film is based on a real-life scenario of someone's wife being murdered and the wrong person being framed for the crime. In 1977, Todorov stated that all films have a narrative structure, which means that he thought every film had 5 stages to the story. Focusing on 3 stages for Taken 3, we have equilibrium at the beginning, which means that everything is alright, disequilibrium in the middle, which means that there is a problem and things are unbalanced, and equilibrium is restored at the end in a resolution. At the beginning of Taken 3, Brian's wife is fine, they are getting along, and his daughter is living an independent life with her boyfriend. However, the disequilibrium comes in when Brian's wife is murdered and Brian is framed for it, meaning the police are after him. He has to try to discover who killed her on his own while evading the police. In the end, a new state of equilibrium arrives, as the murderer is discovered and Brian Mills is allowed to continue with his life normally. Sound analysis using the Taken 3 trailer. Diegetic sound. At 40 seconds in, a police radio diegetic voiceover denotes
"Wanted for murder. Suspect's name, Brian Mills."
This connotes that Brian, the main protagonist in the film, is being looked for and chased by the police as they believe he has killed someone. Additionally, the fact that the suspect is a male reflects stereotypical gender roles of males being more violent and aggressive. The diegetic voiceover sets the tone early of an action-packed film in which Brian has a hard job on his hands to avoid capture, reflecting the action-adventure genre. It also connotes an upcoming disequilibrium, and the audience will sense this, as the police have the wrong idea about Brian, so his regular life is about to get disrupted. 58 seconds into the trailer.
No service record, no discharge record, nothing. This guy right here, he knows how to disappear.
Is denoted by dialogue from the head of police. This connotes that Brian Mills has experience in what he does and will be difficult to catch, which reflects his status as the inimitable hero and protagonist. It also makes the audience anticipate upcoming excitement. This reflects the story in the way that Brian is always one step ahead of the police too, and throughout the film we repeatedly see the police trying to catch up with Brian unsuccessfully. In addition, the head of police is using a teacher-to-pupil mode of address here, as he is giving his team instructions on what to do. 1 minute and 22 seconds in, sound effects denote punching and glass smashing. The connotations of this are combat and danger, and this might make the audience feel nervous for Brian's life. The sound effects reflect the fast-paced, pulsing format of the film, as Brian is always getting into close shaves and dangerous situations with enemies. They also reflect the action-adventure genre, since that type of film often involves these types of things. These types of sound effects are heard constantly throughout the film, which connotes that Brian Mills will stop at nothing to get justice for his wife. This is a stereotypical characteristic of a protagonist. At 1 minute and 57 seconds into the trailer, sound effects denote the screeching of tyres. The connotations of this are a chase of some kind, high speed and danger, and it makes the audience feel adrenaline and anticipation. This is at a point in the film where the police are literally chasing Brian in a fast-paced car pursuit, which reflects the constant underlying plot that the police want to capture Brian Mills. Again, the constant connotations of danger show that Brian Mills isn't afraid of confrontation to prove that he is in the right. Non-diegetic sound. 35 seconds into the trailer, incidental music denotes increasing speed and tempo as Brian escapes through a window. This connotes tension, danger, and fast movement, and also the transition from the equilibrium phase to the disequilibrium phase, as everything in Brian Mills' world suddenly becomes unbalanced. At this point, the audience will sense the upcoming disequilibrium and feel the tension. At 1 minute and 12 seconds, non-diegetic music denotes a slow tempo and melancholy vocal.
Fold down your hands.
There are things I've done in my life, and I was always ready to face the consequences.
The connotations of this are a slight sadness but also tension. The narrative is similar to this in the way that although Brian's wife has died and there is sadness surrounding the family, which the audience will feel too, they must still keep alert in dangerous situations whilst they grieve. At 1 minute and 45 seconds in, incidental music towards the end of the trailer denotes a pounding drum beat and fast tempo.
They're all gonna come for you. They'll find you, and they'll stop you.
This connotes nerves, excitement, and a building drama, and the fast tempo reflects the pulsing adrenaline and action-filled scenes, as Brian must act quickly to avoid death and find who really killed his wife. The audience will be caught up in the moment and excited by what is happening. Adrenaline and excitement are also classic elements of an action-adventure film, so this incidental music reflects the genre. At 2 minutes and 7 seconds, non-diegetic music plays at the end of the clip, denoting a ringing out tone, decreasing in volume without a drum beat as the titles play. The connotations of this are eeriness, reflection and intrigue, which reflects the overall storyline, as there are so many unanswered questions which Brian Mills must set out to answer. This leaves the audience with a feeling of uncertainty and mystery at the end of the trailer, making them want to go and see the full film, while also reflecting the action-adventure genre of it. It paves the way for fast-paced combat, chases and general action. Mise-en-scène using an extract from the film. Taken 3 is set entirely in Los Angeles. This location encodes verisimilitude because since Taken 3 is an action-adventure film, it is the stereotypical big bustling city where crimes and police chases happen. Los Angeles fits the diegesis of Brian trying to evade the police and get justice for his wife due to this. The location makes the audience feel more involved in the action as they can relate to a busy city. In terms of iconography, the extract denotes the classic black cars that action-adventure films tend to have in them. Stuart St. John drives in a smart black Mercedes, while the antagonists who try to kill Brian drive in the classic black armoured SUV. The fact that the cars are black connotes the idea that antagonists are driving them, as well as a sense of disequilibrium, and the connotations of the cars being shiny and new are that the antagonists make a fair bit of money, probably in underhand ways. The cars are icons because they link to the narrative of chases and violence. Brian Mills is always having to get out of trouble with various people, as well as the genre of action-adventure, as these films usually include an eerie vehicle for the antagonist to drive. The audience will recognise the classic black villain cars from countless other films and sense approaching disequilibrium. Another example of iconography in this extract is the small liquor store denoted in the scene at the side of the road, which the antagonists go to get drunk. This store is an icon because often in films, the stereotypical antagonist often doesn't care what he does, goes out and commits crime, and has a few drinks in the process. It's also an icon because it enforces a stereotype that males like to go and get drunk when they are in a group together. The liquor store in Taken 3 reflects this, as the antagonists go in there to get drunk, and a huge fight ends up breaking out between them and Brian. This type of store would be recognised by the audience as one that seems a bit unsafe, and again give a sense of approaching disequilibrium. Moving on to characters and gestures, obviously one key figure in this extract is Brian Mills. One key gesture denotes him quickly swinging a bottle at one of the antagonist's head to knock him out, just after he has entered the liquor store. It is a fast and strong move which connotes aggression and stealth. This is a stereotypical male action in a film, as they are perceived as strong and more aggressive by society. In addition, this move represents his role as protagonist, as he has to be fast-acting and quiet about his work in order to avoid being caught. Another example of key gestures is the onslaught of punches that Brian receives from the main antagonist in this extract as they are deep in combat. The punches he throws are quick and relentless, which connotes a lack of mercy and aggression. The look on the antagonist's face also connotes a hatred of Brian and a willingness to kill him. Again, this is a stereotypical male action, as they tend to be perceived as more violent and uncaring than women in films. However, since this character is the binary opposite to Brian as the antagonist, his movements are different. Brian's movements are less aggressive and he tries to get things done quickly and, if possible, not kill people. The antagonist is a juxtaposition to this because he seems to be a lot more violent and enjoys beating people up. He has no qualms over how much he hurts someone, which might make the audience feel sickened and make them support Brian more in his quest. In terms of costume, Brian Mills denotes a black leather jacket and jeans. This encodes verisimilitude because it is everyday clothing of an American, and it also reflects Brian's attitude as he is cool, casual but also tough. He doesn't let many things faze him. These are the connotations of jeans and a leather jacket. Additionally, this costume reflects the stereotypical attributes of the protagonist, which Brian is. They need to be calm and collected as well as hard to beat, and the audience would recognise these attributes from Brian's costume and demeanour. In comparison to the antagonist's costume, this is one of the areas where the protagonist is actually similar. The antagonist's clothing denotes, just like Brian's, jeans and a black leather jacket. So although they are binary opposites in terms of goodie versus baddie, their costumes are the same. For the antagonist, however, the costume has much stronger connotations of toughness and violence, and it might even appear sinister. Moving on to makeup, the denoted signs of damage on Brian are messy hair, a large bruise on his forehead, and a smaller one on his cheek. This connotes that he has been in a fight and that he is flustered. The bruises also connote the state of disequilibrium that the film is currently in. The overall image of Brian after the fight reflects an angry, violent mood, and this creates verisimilitude for the audience because it is typical after a gritty fight that both people are left feeling tired and angry. In comparison to the antagonist in this scene, Brian looks a lot healthier. Much more makeup is denoted on the antagonist, as after the fight, he is left with bloodstains all over his face, a cut lip, and blood coming from his mouth. He has also been made up to look like he is sweating heavily at this point. This connotes that he has been beaten hard in the fight and is weak and exhausted. These connotations reflect the stereotypical antagonist in a film, as they often get into a lot of fights but usually end up getting beaten by the protagonist. In addition, both the makeup of Brian and the antagonist reflects the genre of action-adventure. There is almost always an epic fight in there somewhere. The audience might themselves feel adrenaline after witnessing the fight. There are a couple of significant props in this extract from Taken 3. Denoted is the bottle which Brian uses to knock out one of the antagonists quickly and quietly as he enters the liquor store. This prop is significant because it has connotations of brutality and pain, and it reflects the action-adventure genre of the film. Furthermore, it reflects the protagonist's stereotypical ability to do whatever it takes to make things right, even if it involves violence. This links to the narrative in the way that Brian is always getting out of dangerous situations using his combat skills. Another significant prop is the gun. It connotes danger and tension in the extract because instead of it being something used as a simple killing machine, there are multiple guns denoted and they are always changing hands and being wildly fired in an attempt to harm. It is almost a free-for-all and the audience's hearts will be in their mouths as it is uncertain who the gun will end up with. This prop is significant because it again reflects the genre of action-adventure. It is hard to find a film of this genre without a gun in it. In addition, it enforces the male gender stereotype of toughness and violence, as all of the men carry guns and don't hesitate to use them. The location, at 1 hour 13 minutes and 10 seconds in, is an example of low-key lighting. Brian and his daughter, Kim, are denoted in the scene in a group of people who are trying to decide how to make Kim safe again by looking at the police records and questioning Stuart St. John for information. The low lighting and shadows connote a deep state of disequilibrium at the time, and also a fear for people's safety. There are also some lights coloured dark red in the background and one on the wall, which might connote upcoming danger. The narrative darkens as the conversation goes on too, as it is revealed that Brian's wife was killed because Stuart couldn't pay off someone he owed money to. The low-key lighting creates a sinister and murky atmosphere for the audience at this point. Juxtaposed to this is high-key lighting denoted in the film at 1 hour 37 minutes and 55 seconds, which is right at the end of the film. The bright, natural sunset connotes a happy and calm ending as Kim decides to name her unborn daughter after her late mother, Lenore. In this way, the scene is solemn but also relaxed and victorious, as Stuart has been arrested and all problems are solved for now. The audience might feel relieved that everything is now okay as it can be, given Lenore has died. This stereotypical happy ending can be linked to the action-adventure genre, as they usually end up with the goodie defeating the baddie, and things turning out well. The high-key sunset over the sea connotes an end to the disequilibrium and the resolution phase being entered as the film draws to a close. Camera work. At 3 minutes and 26 seconds, an establishing shot denotes the city of Los Angeles at night. It encodes verisimilitude for the audience, as they can see that the film takes place in a real city in America, where it would be realistic for the genre of action and adventure to take place. In addition, the shot connotes a busy and public place where action is going to happen, while the fact that it is dark might make the audience already sense a connoted upcoming disequilibrium. The close-up shot at 15 minutes in denotes an expression on the face of Brian Mills as he is told by Stuart St. John that he wants him to stop seeing Lenore, his ex-wife. The connotations of this expression are confusion, suspicion and concentration as he attempts to understand why he is being told this. This reflects the role of the protagonist, as they always have to be wary of others and figure out what is actually going on under the surface. Also, the audience might begin to feel uneasy at this point, as the expression connotes the very beginning of the disequilibrium stage of the film. Something has been said to Brian that doesn't seem quite right, so it seems like things might get worse from this point. At 1 hour and 26 minutes in, a high-angle shot denotes Oleg Malenkov being brutally threatened by Brian Mills. The shot connotes the fear, weakness and desperation of Malenkov at this point, based on his facial expression and the way the camera looks down on him like he is small and weak. It makes him subordinate and being dominated by the protagonist Brian. As the protagonist is threatening an antagonist and still trying to find who killed his wife, the film is in the disequilibrium stage, but the audience would feel relief that Brian has the upper hand on this antagonist. The situation is a classic element of the action-adventure genre. The fact that Malenkov is male and subordinate represents challenged gender stereotypes in the way that it is usually a female in films who is portrayed as feeble and scared. However, since he is also being threatened by a male, John Berger's 1972 theory of men act, women appear is represented. This means that males have all of the main protagonist-antagonist roles in films, while women have smaller parts, and this is certainly the case in Taken 3. At 1 hour and 35 minutes, there is a low-angle shot which denotes Brian Mills threatening Stuart St. John right at the end of the film, as he has found him out to be the main antagonist behind all of his grief. The angle of the camera connotes the power and dominance of Brian Mills, while his facial expression connotes disgust and a built-up anger at Stuart St. John. The fact that the protagonist holds all the power over the antagonist at the end of the film is typical of an action-adventure film, as after a long hard struggle, he comes out on top. This reflects the dawning of the resolution stage of the film, and the audience will start to feel calmer and happier as order is restored to Brian's life and the antagonist is defeated. In terms of gender stereotypes, this shot is very stereotypical. Brian is male and showing his strength and power over Stuart, and since Stuart is male too, John Berger's 1972 theory, men act, women appear, also applies. The brief tracking shot at 18 minutes and 51 seconds denotes Brian as he runs away from the police towards the start of the film. The shot allows our eyes to keep up with Brian as he runs, which connotes speed and urgency, as well as the start of the disequilibrium stage of the film. As the audience feel like they are moving with Brian, they will feel the adrenaline of the situation and feel excited at the fast-paced action. This reflects the action-adventure genre, as speed and excitement are classic elements of it. Additionally, the expression of Brian in this shot connotes that he is focused on the task at hand and not overly flustered. This reflects his character type of protagonist, and further underlines gender stereotypes in the way that a male is the centre of attention once again, using his strength to get away. At 1 hour and 2 minutes, the panning shot denotes a movement from left to right, showing first the sea and the seashore before panning to the road and the fence that runs alongside it. This slow, steady movement represents our eyes as we survey the new setting, creating verisimilitude for the audience as they are introduced to a realistic area near the coast where action is about to take place. Also, the fact that the movement is slow and at the beginning of a scene connotes a sense of calm before the storm, as there is no action happening at the time but the audience know it is approaching. The connoted upcoming disequilibrium might therefore make the viewer feel wary and uneasy. Denoted at 48 minutes and 30 seconds is an example of a shallow depth of field shot. Since only the foreground is in focus and the background is out of focus, it connotes an importance of the character in the foreground, in this case Kim, Brian's daughter. The connotations of Kim's facial expression are misery, grief and a wistfulness, which will translate to the audience as they can probably relate to how it feels to lose something special. In addition, the fact that there is a sadness in the shot and the background is out of focus connotes that the film is in a deep stage of disequilibrium, as things aren't clear and there is no order in Kim's life at the time. This shallow depth of field shot is very significant in the way that it challenges gender roles. Usually in films, males are seen as dominant while females are subordinate and seen as not as important. However, in this shot, the roles are reversed, as Kim is the important one in the foreground, while a male is out of focus and unimportant in the background. Therefore, many theories are challenged, including John Berger's Men Act, Women Appear, as well as Laura Mulvey's The Male Gaze, as Kim is not dressed in a sexually suggestive way for males to look at as an object. Editing. At 14 minutes and 51 seconds, we see a shot-reverse shot structure denoting Kim accusing Stuart of killing Lenore. All of the shot types within this structure are close-ups, which connotes tension and a hatred between the two. This section of editing actually represents challenged gender roles, as the camera angle is at eye level for both characters, connoting that they are on equal footing, whilst Kim is the one accusing and attacking Stuart with their dialogue. This would make the audience feel supportive of Kim, as she is one of the protagonists. Again, the two characters are binary opposites, as one is male and one is female, but this time the roles are reversed slightly, as Kim holds her own against Stuart, and if anything, she is more dominant in this scene. For this reason, John Berger's 1972 theory of men act, women appear does not apply here. When he said this, he meant that in films, men generally tend to get the main protagonist or antagonist roles, while women get the smaller parts. But here, Kim is acting as a main protagonist in the film, and she is not being overshadowed by a male character. This is somewhat unusual for a film with a genre of action-adventure, as the protagonists in them are most often male. She is also not a victim of Laura Mulvey's male gaze theory, as she is not dressed up to look sexually attractive for the pleasure of male viewers. She is dressed up as a protagonist and to get the job done. Another example of shot-reverse shot structure is at 1 hour and 4 minutes, denoting one of the antagonists trying to chat up the shopkeeper. In terms of the camera angles that have been used here, the antagonist is shown from a low angle, while the shopkeeper is shown from eye level. Gender stereotypes are therefore encoded here, as the low angle gives the antagonist dominance and power over the shopkeeper, as if she is an object for him to chat up and say what he likes to. The eye-level angle on the shopkeeper gives her no particular powers, and the audience might put themselves in her shoes and feel slightly intimidated or offended by the antagonist. Male and female is an example of binary opposition, and this is an example of males being dominant and females being subordinate in films, reinforcing gender stereotypes. John Berger's theory of men act and women appear is represented by this editing also. In this scene, we see the male antagonist doing most of the acting, as he chats up the female shopkeeper while she just appears by simply smiling or laughing. In addition, Carl Rogers' 1980 theory of ideal self and ideal partner applies here, meaning the shopkeeper is portrayed as the ideal partner because she is made up to appeal to the audience. At 18 minutes and 36 seconds in the film, there is an example of action match, denoting Brian jumping out of a window as he first gets in trouble with the police. The fact that this one action runs through 4 different shots connotes that it is an action which involves a lot of skill and timing, which Brian has in abundance. This would make the audience feel thrilled, as the fast cuts between multiple angles create a fast pace and sense of excitement, the perfect atmosphere for a film of the action-adventure genre. Also, the majority of the shots in this action match are low-angle shots, which connotes that Brian is powerful and knows what he is doing. This represents gender stereotypes, as once again, the main protagonist in the film, Brian, is male and portrayed as strong and skillful. We do not see a female in the film doing stunts like Brian. In terms of theory that this action match could relate to, there is Carl Rogers' ideal self. Brian's character in the film is as the protagonist and as the perfect all-round human and family member, making him the ideal self in the film. This means that the audience members look up to him as a role model for themselves to be like. We see an example of cross-cutting at 1 hour and 28 minutes, which denotes the head of police in his car communicating with some of his squad in Malenkov's building as they try to defuse the situation between him and Brian. The expressions on the faces of the policemen connote concern, but also a calmness as they go about their work. The cross-cutting editing here makes the audience feel like the police operation is real and cohesive, as well as giving them a sense of the scale of the operation through the use of multiple locations, which was its purpose. In terms of representations, there are 5 or 6 males involved in this cross-cutting sequence, compared to 0 females, which reinforces gender roles as males have all of the important jobs and roles in the film. Therefore, this relates perfectly to John Berger's Men Act, Women Appear theory of 1972, as the men are doing all of the acting in this important police scene, while women aren't even appearing. At 52 minutes and 43 seconds, an insert shot is used which denotes Kim picking out her usual yogurt from the local store, but on closer inspection she sees a message reading, "Drink me now." The shot type on the insert shot is a very slight tilt down, which helps the audience to read the message as the camera goes over it, but it could also reflect how the meaning of the message, and who wrote it, slowly dawns on the audience. The insert shot connotes a sense of urgency due to the adverb now, but also a sense of mystery and intrigue as it is only a fleeting glance at what was written. Brian wrote the message in an attempt to eventually meet with Kim, but the shot is too quick for the audience to realise this straight away. They would realise as the film progresses. At the point 1 hour and 27 minutes in the film, there is an example of eyeline match. The 2 shots denote Stuart St. John surreptitiously glancing at Kim's computer screen to make sure she isn't doing anything behind his back. The connotations of the glance are wariness and caution, but also evil intentions if Kim does anything Stuart doesn't like, so the audience might feel on edge and nervous for her. This reflects the disequilibrium stage of the film, as the scene is quiet, tense and shifty. In addition to this, the close-up of Stuart's face and the dislike that we see in his expression represents the stereotypical antagonist. The other characters don't realise it yet, but he is constantly checking up on them and he is in control, having deceived them all. Since he is dominant in the situation and he could easily harm or control Kim if she did anything out of line, it represents stereotypical gender roles, as the male is dominant over the subordinate female. Production process. For a blockbuster film like Taken 3, pre-production, production and post-production are all important in making the finished product. An example of pre-production for this film would be the scouting of the location Los Angeles, as 20th Century Fox would have wanted a city that created verisimilitude for the audience, and would be an appropriate setting for the narrative of fast-paced crime action. Another example of pre-production for Taken 3 would be the designing of sets, one of which is the small beach shack at 1 hour and 8 minutes. This set, where Stuart is tortured for Brian for information, would have been made up by the crew to look dim, deserted and intimidating through all of the chains, tools and various canisters around the shack. They would have done this to make the scene feel gritty for the audience. Moving on to production, There is an example of on-set pyrotechnics at the point 1 hour and 3 minutes, denoting Brian's car blowing up after it has been battered by the antagonists and rolled down a hill. The purpose of this aspect of production was to create verisimilitude and spectacle for the audience, to round off a lengthy car chase between Brian and the antagonists. Another aspect of production in Taken 3 is the costume and makeup of Oleg Malenkov at 1 hour and 25 minutes. Malenkov wears nothing but an unbuttoned white jacket and white underpants since he was in the hot tub when Brian stormed into his apartment. In terms of makeup, his face is battered and bruised, and there are scars, cuts and blood, known as prosthetics, coming from his lips. His costume and makeup combined make him look completely defeated by Brian at this point, and the purpose of this is to create verisimilitude so that the audience can see what Brian has done to him, as well as reinforcing the idea that Brian is the heroic protagonist. Finally, looking at post-production, at 1 hour and 33 minutes, Brian crashes into the aeroplane carrying Stuart and his daughter just as it is about to take off. There are multiple explosions, clouds of dust fly up and sparks fly everywhere as the plane's body slides along the ground. This example of CGI once again creates spectacle for the viewer at the end of the film, and the purpose of it would have been to leave them with a lasting sense of excitement after the film is finished. Another example of post-production for this film is at 1 hour and 34 minutes, as Brian has a flashback when he realises that Stuart was the one behind his wife's murder all along. The post-producers have made the colours in the flashback section look white and washed out, which creates a sense of a vague memory coming back to Brian. It also helps the audience to differentiate between what is happening in real time and what is a memory. Thank you for listening to this educational resource about the media product Taken 3. I've been Alex Blundell, and I hope you will join me again for the next one.